What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Playbook Sports Podcast. Yes, it's a little later in the week for the weekly mock draft, but I got some help this time. As
Let's
Post
go.
Malone said, I had some help, baby. Today, for this mock draft iteration, we are doing a sort of a dueling mock draft where I'm going to take the odds. Addison's going to take the evens. We've been doing some research. We are ready for this. Addison, first mock draft of the year for you. You stoked or what?
I'm damn excited for this mock draft. Been waiting to get my hands dirty doing one of these bad boys and just can't wait. Got you on the other side. I'm sure the even numbers are going to look better than the odd by the end of this thing.
100%. Oh, I'm sure. But without further ado, I'm firing up the PFF mock draft simulator, making sure I'm still good on here. You still see me okay? Everything good
Yes,
there?
indeed. Everything here is good.
Right on. All righty, we're going to go ahead and get this draft started. Now, you tell me if you ever can't see me because it takes me
Yeah,
off of the screen on my screen
we'll
while I'm
do.
doing
We'll do.
this.
Yeah, you're
So just
good.
let me know. Pick one, as I've got the odds. I am going to take the generational potentially. I don't know if he's generational, but I think Abdul Carter's probably the pick at one. Just with everything they've said, I don't see anything, no offense to these quarterback prospects, I don't see anything generational about either quarterback that's really being talked about in the first round. It's Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. I think Abdul Carter, I've said it so many times in mock drafts, he's just now scratching his surface of what he can be. And what he already is damn good.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna go best player available there, in my opinion, and that is without a doubt Abdul Carter.
Yeah, I think Abdul Carter's the right pick there at one. Like you said, Nate, he's just scratching the ceiling of what his potential can be. And I agree with the quarterback assessment that you have. I don't know if either one of these guys, Cam Ward or Shedeur, is a complete franchise changer for a team that is picking one overall for a reason. So I love the Abdul Carter pick there.
Right. Number
Just
two.
jumping into number two, then yeah. Cleveland Browns. I know there's big talk about the quarterback need there with the Deshaun Watson injury, two Achilles tears on the same side in 3 months. So he's definitely cooked for this next season, maybe his career.
Mm-hmm.
Their contract situation, they're 30 million plus in cap, so they're in hell right now. And I
Yeah.
don't think drafting a rookie quarterback is the fix to that. It might be a band-aid that you better put on damn good or it's going to rip off real quick.
Yep.
I think you go best player available here, and in my opinion, that's neither one of these quarterbacks. I'm going to go Travis Hunter, corner/receiver from Colorado. The guy's absolutely absurd. 700 plus defensive snaps last year, and he also caught 15 touchdowns, led the NCAA in receiving touchdowns. Just a great year from Travis Hunter, won the Heisman. And if you're the Browns, he's the best player available, and you really can do either side potentially for this guy. I think he's probably leaning defense. You just pair him up with Denzel Ward and you get another piece on that defense. Try to get something right. Travis Hunter can be a piece for the future for this Cleveland's Brown team that sticks through it, even if it goes back. Because if you go the rookie quarterback and struggle, is he gone in 3 seasons because the team was just such shit around him? I think Travis Hunter can survive that because he's just such a good player. So I'm going to go Hunter 2 to the Browns.
Yeah, I think that is a smart pick, I think, especially if you're a Browns fan. Like, you've got to be happy with that. Because it's like you said, yeah, okay, if you take a quarterback, you're still paying Deshaun Watson 70 plus million. Even though he's hurt next year, you still have to pay him all that money, and you're setting up your rookie quarterback to fail. Because how much of your cap space is going to a quarterback that isn't playing? I just don't love that for a situation. I think the Browns, I think even if the Titans went QB, I think the Browns might take Abdul Carter at pick 2.
Yeah, I can see that completely.
Wouldn't shock me at all with Myles Garrett saying, I don't want to be around for a rebuild. It's like, okay, then we'll trade you. You get a ton of capital for Myles Garrett and bring in Abdul Carter, who has one of the highest ceilings in the entire draft.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
I absolutely love that pick of Travis Hunter. I think he is probably pound for pound the most talented player in the draft. It's close with him and Carter. You really can't go wrong with either of them.
Yeah.
Which makes the Giants pick, I think, pretty easy. I think that if both quarterbacks fall to you, you have to make the move. Now, which quarterback do you go with? I mean, personally, I would go with Cam Ward. Bigger arm, better athlete than Shedeur is. Now, I've seen somewhere Shedeur said in one of his most recent practices, he said, I look forward to playing the Cowboys a ton, meaning that the Giants maybe said something to him that he might be their guy. That all being said, I do not care. Cam Ward is built for the modern NFL, whereas I don't think Shedeur Sanders is. And this pains me to say this, obviously, as a Dolphins fan. Shedeur Sanders' prospect profile fits Tua's pretty damn good. Super accurate. Very good processor. Good at reading defenses. Not a great athlete, not the strongest arm. Is going to rely on anticipation throws. Is going to rely on his accuracy and throwing to spots. And you don't take that at pick 3 when you have a guy that has a way stronger arm and is way more athletic like Cam Ward. I think that the Giants are thrilled they don't have to move up. They just sit and pick, and they get hopefully quarterback of the future.
Yeah, I like Cam Ward at 3 as well, Nate. I think he has the highest ceiling of any quarterback, and that's what you draft for if you're drafting this high for a QB. You pretty much nailed it on the head with Shedeur. He's the anticipation guy. He's good at reading defenses, and Cam Ward can extend a play if he needs to with his legs. He's got the cannon arm attached to his body, so he can make any throw. I think the Giants should lead Cam Ward in this situation. It's just nice that the two teams that are quarterback needy did not take a quarterback at the top of the draft.
Yeah.
But with Cam Ward at 3, Patriots here, they like to think that they have a quarterback for the future, and what better than to give him somebody that's going to keep him upright for maybe the rest of his career. Number 4, I'm going to take Will Campbell out of LSU. Might be a slight reach, but we're not doing trades or anything for this mock, so taking the team needs into account, I think Will Campbell, if he's a guard or a tackle in the NFL, I think he could potentially play both. Definitely guard. I think he could play tackle. I think the Patriots are definitely intrigued by that, and they take him because, again, it's a guy that can protect Drake May for 10-plus years if this pans out. So I'm going Will Campbell from LSU for the New England Patriots at pick 4.
Yeah, I like that pick. Patriots have maybe one offensive lineman you can point to for the future, and that's Mike Onwenu, who's getting older, and he plays right tackle. So you've got to figure out 4 other spots, and Will Campbell's like, I can play any of them except center. And I think he can play him at a high level. So there's some things in his breakdowns that I'm a little concerned with. I think he will truly be a way better guard than a tackle. I just think he'll get cooked by speed rushers, and I saw him struggle against Nick Scorton a bunch in their game when they played. He could not move him very well. So I have some concerns about him at tackle, but as a guard, I think he'll thrive, and there's no problem with that in New England. You just get somebody in front of your quarterback who can block for him, and he's going to be happy. I think that's a real solid pick. Jaguars on the clock at pick number 5, and there's 2 guys on the board that I'd consider with this pick, and they're both Michigan men. Honestly, that Michigan defense had some dogs on it, brother. Mason Graham and or Will Johnson, I think, are the 2 guys that I'm really debating between here. And I was begging for them to go corner last year, and they didn't. I was like, you guys, you have a shot at any corner on the board. They even moved up, I'm pretty sure. And they were like, nah, we're going to take Brian Thomas Jr., who was awesome, by the way. Yeah. Love me some Brian Thomas Jr., but I'm going to have them rectifying that, and I'm going to have them taking Will Johnson here. I think that you need a corner so badly. They signed Eric Armstead last year, not saying that he's anything great, and you could argue either way. I'm curious, Jaguars fans watching this video, let me know who you want. If both of those guys are available with your pick at pick number 5, are you on board with Mason Graham, or do you want Will Johnson? I can absolutely argue for either of them. They're both incredibly talented, top of the class in their positions. So I'm going to go with Will Johnson on this iteration, but next time it might be Mason Graham. I think it's a flip of the coin, truthfully.
Yeah, I like Will Johnson. I think he is just pound for pound the best corner in the draft. Obviously, Travis Hunter, you could kind of weird. The other side of the ball, it gives him a little bit extra oomph. But he's a damn good corner either way. But the fact that Will Johnson's even in the conversation with the guy that's supposedly the best player pound for pound, I love that. Jacksonville needs help pretty much everywhere on that defense. You can't go wrong picking a premier player at a premier position. Number 6 here, the Raiders. I mean, it's pretty much shoehorned in here, but I feel like they're going to go quarterback. Pete Carroll needs somebody to run the ship there, and it's not Aiden O'Connell. So I'm going to go Shedeur Sanders. He tweeted, "Thank you, God," after the Raiders lost every Sunday last year. He's probably just shouting out God, but the timestamps were very interesting with Raiders L's adding up. I mean, I'm sure the Las Vegas lifestyle won't be too bad for a guy like Shedeur. He's going to be the immediate face of the franchise. I do like Shedeur's profile in the NFL. I think the team just has to be built for him to succeed, which is pretty much every single player in the league. But a quarterback that can read defenses, get the ball out quick, and have anticipation, that's all things you want a quarterback to be able to do. So I think Shedeur could succeed. I just don't know if he is that top 5 upper echelon quarterback. But at the end of the day, if you need a quarterback and there's quarterbacks in the draft, you're going to be leaning one way. So I'm going to go Shedeur Sanders to the Las Vegas Raiders. Just get that piece for the future, and Pete Carroll gets his shiny new toy to go along with his new contract.
Agreed. The only reason I would have initially pushed back on Shedeur Sanders was before they would have hired Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll is 73 years old. He's not interested in sucking this year for a
No.
quarterback in next year's draft class. He's ready to go, and he's gonna go. He's a good coach. They're not going to be this awfully run team next year. They're going to be a disciplined, well-run team. And he's not, like I said, he's not interested in sitting around waiting on the quarterback, maybe in next draft class. Like, he's like, listen, if he thinks he can make it work with Shedeur Sanders, he's going to get him. And
Yeah.
like you said, Shedeur Sanders has some really good traits about him. I don't think he's a top 5 guy, like you said, but I do think that there is something there to make him this pick. And I think the Raiders are happy that they don't have to reach on a QB
Yeah.
and one just falls to them. So I like
Yep.
that pick. I think that if it falls like this, I don't see any problem with that at all. New York Jets on the clock at pick number 7 here. And I keep going back and forth with this pick, but I think it's just kind of obvious to me. I think if Mason Graham is there at pick 7, the Jets really should take him. I know Daniel Jeremiah mocked them tight end, Tyler Warren. I just don't. That feels like a luxury pick for a team that isn't picking at number 7. That feels like a pick for a team that's like, hey, let's just go get this dynamic player. Like, that's a pick the Chiefs can make. The Jets have so many
Mahomes tore his
needs.
ACL and missed an entire season, and the Chiefs are picking 7. Then they go out on the limb and take Warren. Not when you, I'll let you continue, but you're definitely right on that.
Right. A team that doesn't normally pick in the top 10 can do that, can make a pick like that. But if you're the Jets and you have an opportunity to trot out 2 defensive tackles named Quinnen Williams and Mason Graham, you do that. You absolutely do that. And Aaron Glenn is going to he's a gritty kind of guy. He's all about the defense. So I think the pick is going to be on the defensive side of the ball. And with Mason Graham here and with Will Johnson off the board, I think Mason Graham is one that they are thrilled to get in the building in New York.
Yeah, definitely. I love Mason Graham, obviously big Michigan fan, but still, either way, he's just a damn good defensive lineman. He's arguably a top 5 player in the draft.
Yep.
So the Jets getting him at 7 when quarterbacks go in front of him. I think if they went Warren, that's leaning if Rodgers comes back and they're just trying to band-aid it even more. So I hope they don't go Warren for Jets fans' sake, because that's an ugly future if they continue to try to plug the leak when it's clearly just need to abandon ship. We'll move on to number 8 here. Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young last year bench, comes back, starts playing immensely better. So I think the Panthers are going to buy in on that and try to build for the future. Adam Thielen's not going to be there forever, and Xavier Legette had a case of the drops near the end of the season when it hurt the most, a couple game-winning drops. I think McMillan, the receiver from Arizona, is the pick. I mean, this guy could go forward to the Patriots. He's absolutely elite. I mean, I know all the fancy warm-up catches, whatever, if you like that. If you don't, the guy's a freak athlete, and he can make those plays if it came down to it in a game. I think he's just a big body, which Bryce Young can excel throwing to. If you can give a jump ball to a big guy that's going to go down and get it, you're going to build confidence with him quickly. I think McMillan could be a gigantic piece for that offense, because eventually they're going to need somebody to take Thielen's place, and I don't know if Legette is that. I think a McMillan, I get it, taking receivers in back-to-back drafts, but still, it's just, let's go get weapons for Bryce Young, who showed me enough to say, hey, the franchise is back in on this guy. So McMillan from Arizona, absolutely elite, probably the best receiver prospect, and you're getting him at 8. I get there's needs other places. I think if Will Johnson goes right before him, they're a little heartbroken, but they're going to just smile all the way through it with McMillan. So I'm going to go him for the Carolina Panthers at 8.
Yeah, like that pick a lot. And with him sitting there and like the available players on the board here, I think Tetairoa McMillan's probably one of the last ones of that upper echelon of blue chip prospects. There's another maybe 2 or 3 in there, but I think that Tetairoa McMillan would be an awesome, especially in the red zone, man. He's going to be dominant in the red zone, which is something that they don't have. They do not have that. I mean, Jatavian Sanders kind of came on for them late in the year, but you get someone like Tetairoa McMillan. I mean, he's a mismatch nightmare. So I think that Bryce Young would love to have him in the building. Absolutely. New Orleans Saints on the clock here at pick number 9. Wide receiver, tight end, defensive line kind of listed as their needs here. I'm going to take somebody who I think is going to climb up draft boards. And this isn't someone we talked about before the show either as going at this pick. So this might be a bit of a surprise. I think that after watching him play some more, I think that there's a defensive tackle that's going to fly up boards when he tests. This dude played at 340 plus pounds all season long, and I see him running down wide receivers and running backs. I think Kenneth Grant is in line to push for a top 10 pick, honestly. I think that he is going to test out of this world. He's unbelievably strong. He's so hard to move. And just because Mason Graham was his teammate, he's been kind of forgotten about, oh, he's the second option. It's like, no. They were both starters, and Kenneth Grant was a real problem. Kind of in the mold of how Oh, the guy the Eagles took a couple years ago, Jordan Davis, like a real problem. No, he didn't put up
Yeah,
crazy numbers on that Georgia defensive line, but he's a freak. Kenneth Grant is going, he thinks he's going to fly up draft boards, man. Now,
I
you
love
could
it.
argue a weapon here, especially with Kellen Moore coming over, likely. Not officially yet, but it sounds like it's pretty much official. But I'm going to roll with Kenneth Grant at pick 9. Without a doubt, the highest I have had him go the entire mock draft season.
Hey, I love to see it, man. That'd be 3 Michigan players in the top 10,
I
and
think
I'd
they
be ready to
deserve it.
cheer to you. I mean, they do deserve it. They're definitely good, and I have Kenneth Grant going in the first round in pretty much every mock I do. I've never had him that high, but I love to see that. 10 here going to my team, the Chicago Bears. This was an interesting situation. I don't want to account for free agency when that's all hypothetical and hasn't happened yet. So this is going in. They need line help and they also need edge help. I don't know if they're going to be leaning line at 10 if Will Campbell's not there. I know Banks is good, and I know that Josh Simmons has started to fly up boards as of late. I think the Bears go edge here, though. Dennis Allen coming in. We need another piece across Montez Sweat on that edge. And Dennis Allen loves his big body edges. I think James Pierce Jr.
Yes.
is the pick from Tennessee. He's 6'5". He's gigantic body. And again, he's just going to be paired with Montez Sweat for Dennis Allen. It's what he took down in New Orleans when he was the head coach. I think he'll have a big impact on who the Bears select at 10. If this is how it shakes out in front of them, I will not be upset at all if the Bears address the defensive side of the line with the first pick. They need help there as well. I get the offensive line struggled, and I would hope that they would continue to address it the rest of the draft. But the defensive side also needs addressed on that edge spot. So let's go get one of the best edge prospects available. And again, I think he fits Dennis Allen's mold for what he wants as his defensive end size-wise. So I think that plays a big part. But I'm going to go Pierce Jr. for the Bears at 10.
Yeah, you already know I love that pick. I've been absolutely banging the drum for James Pierce Jr. the entire mock draft season. Back in December, he was down in like the mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, why? What are we seeing that's dropping him? All he did was produce this year. No, he doesn't have these insane long arms. He doesn't have the Michael Williams arms or the stupid speed of Abdul Carter. But what he does have is production. And he puts it up against SEC opponents. And last year we did this too with Jared Verse. Jared Verse going into the 2023 NCAA season was a consensus top 5 pick. This guy's a stud.
Yeah, maybe even one. Maybe even one.
Could have gone at pick number 1. And then he had a really solid year for Florida State, but we're like, he doesn't have these traits. There's a ton of traits out there, and it's like, why is this guy falling all the way to pick 19? And then he does, and he's going to be Defensive Player of the Year. It's like, well, maybe we overthought that one just a little bit, guys. How about you just take the guy that's good at football? I don't care how you test.
He's a damn good football player, and that's
what
matters. Yeah.
Give me a damn good football player. And speaking of a damn good football player, I've got the San Francisco's up here on the clock, and I'm scrolling down just a touch to find this guy, someone I've been super high on recently. I think Armand Membo is an awesome pick for the 49ers here. You still do have Trent Williams. I don't know how many more years of a
Yeah. Sort of lagging here. Looks like.
out of him. Yeah. But Mike McGlinchey left in free agency a couple years ago. Armand Membo gives you really, really good. Am I good internet-wise?
Yeah, you're good now. You did lag for a second, but we're back in. We're back in.
All right, cool. But yeah, Armand Membo gives you versatility on the offensive line. His tape is so much fun to watch. He is fast. He is aggressive. He is a smart offensive lineman. He would be excellent in San Francisco scheme and would give them 2 bookend tackles. So I'm going to go with Armand Membo, pick 11.
Yeah, I like the Membo pick there. You said it, Nate. How long do you have Trent Williams? One, the injuries also this past season. They started to pile up these past couple years. And Membo can play guard and then maybe get kicked to tackle later in his career. Just get some experience watching Trent Williams, then eventually take over his role. I do love that pick. For the 49ers, I think offensive line's a good thing because if you're paying Purdy, you're going to have to draft some young kids to block for him.
Yep.
Number 12. Now, this is almost just if I don't take this guy here, like, where does he go? And I feel bad, Colin, because I know you're going to be watching this video.
It's a match made in heaven.
It is a match made in heaven. I think depending on how free agency plays out, a couple more places maybe open up for that match made in heaven. But this is the first one I think that really shakes down on the draft board. And that's Ashton Jeanty to the Cowboys at 12. Colin, I pray for you and all Cowboy fans out there that this guy replicates even somewhat of Ezekiel Elliott's rookie season. Because if he does not, he's going to be looked at as a major bust. Because
Mhm.
I understand the running back is a need, but is that the biggest need the Cowboys have? I don't know. I think they could maybe address it in free agency and live, but with a guy like Genty, and I'm not the biggest believer in him, but if they are and they think he could be a top 5 NFL running back, you take him at 12 because they do win you football games. Running backs have the big stigma that you can't pay them. Well, every single team wishes they paid Saquon. Every single team wishes they paid Derrick Henry. A lot of teams wish they paid Josh Jacobs.
Yeah.
Those guys helped their football teams win multiple games, and Saquon's going to have a chance to help his team win a Super Bowl. So Ashton Genty to the Cowboys, it's just you need a good running back, and Genty could definitely be that. Again, I know it's not what maybe Cowboys fans want, but it's what you get. It's what you get. Ashton Genty at 12.
Love it. Yep. I absolutely see that happening. This is a really bad free agent class for running backs. It's a really deep draft, but honestly,
It
none of them are
is.
as good as Ashton Genty.
Yeah, that's the whole point. It's like if you had a deep draft class of tight ends, would you not take Brock Bowers knowing what he produced just because there's good tight ends behind him? It's like, well, is he better than everybody? Well,
He is. He was
yeah.
insane. So good this year. Miami Dolphins on the clock at pick number 13. And the way the board falls, it's just, I want offensive line so bad is what I would like. I'm not going to because of how the board fell out and because of a glaring hole on defense. Our safeties this year, Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer, both free agents, and they both sucked last year. Like bottom 10% in the NFL. And I'm so sick of watching them miss tackles and just not be where they need to be and cost us football games. Malachi Starks, I think, is one of the 5 best players in the entire draft. He's a dog, literally a Georgia Bulldog, and also a dog mentality on
He
the
is.
field. He's a leader. I think he brings a little bit of nastiness to hopefully Anthony Weaver's defense. Hopefully he's still here. Gives Weaver kind of his Kyle Hamilton type of guy. Now, I know they're different players, but Malachi Starks does it all on defense. He can play that slot corner role if he needs to, drop back into coverage, play in the box a little bit too. I love a defensive Swiss Army knife like Brian Branch. So Malachi Starks at pick 13 to Miami.
Yeah, Malachi Starks is the right pick there. I think. I know the offensive line troubles. You want to keep Tua safe. Malachi Starks is an elite player
Yep.
that can be the back end of your defense for years to come. And like you said, the Dolphins struggles in the secondary from the safety position. He answers all of that as a rookie. So I think that's a great pick there at 13. Number 14 here. I think talk might get a little bit crazy that they won't be leaning this guy the closer it comes to the draft. Bob was bringing up points for the Colts, how Tyler Warren is not at the Senior Bowl. The Colts coaches are working with the tight ends. Maybe they fall in love with a different one. I think it's similar to that scenario of Genty. Is Warren the best tight end, the best tight end with the football in his hands, the best playmaker at that position? He is. The Colts need that position. I think that unlocks Joshua Downs a little bit more in their offense, so you don't have to just primarily use him as that short route runner for Anthony Richardson. You add a guy like Tyler Warren who can make plays with his legs after he gets the ball in his hands. So I'm going to go Tyler Warren, tight end from Penn State. I think it's just a nice landing spot for him. They need a tight end. You know, this could be a guy that's a Dallas Clark-esque. If it's not Richardson, if it's a quarterback in the future, this guy can still be a playmaker for him. So you go get a piece that you need. They haven't had a tight end for a decade that's really been memorable. I mean, maybe a season or two here and there from a guy, but nothing crazy. So give me Tyler Warren as a guy that can be your tight end for 10 years in Indy, Dallas Clark Jr. maybe. So give me Tyler Warren to the Colts at 14.
Yeah, I love that pick. I mean, we haven't seen a tight end, like an offense run through a tight end the way that Penn State's did this year. I will say Harold Fannin Jr. for Bowling Green sort of did that this year too, but that's not Penn State doing it and going as far as they did. Like
That's the
that's
guy
crazy.
that Bob, our local Colts fan, thinks that they'll probably end up passing on Warren for is the Bowling Green tight end.
It's for
Not this early, but like that'll be their justification.
Yeah, well, we knew we could get this guy in the later rounds, so we passed on Warren in the
Yeah, we
first round.
passed
That
on
would be
maybe the
sickening.
best tight end. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be sickening, Bob. I'd be devastated for you. Atlanta Falcons on the clock here, and I'm picking between 2 guys. I begged them last year to take an edge rusher in the first round, and they said, no, we need a quarterback. While that may have turned out to be a pretty good pick, actually, because Kirk Cousins sucked, and they need a QB, and Penix would be one of the best QBs in this draft class, so you already got him. So I'm looking at edge. I'm looking on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm looking at 2 edge rushers here. I'm looking at Mike Green, and I'm looking at Mykel Williams. Mike Green is flying up draft boards, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
flying up draft boards. He had an insane year this year, 17 sacks,
Yeah.
32 quarterback hurries, a 92.4 grade on PFF. He's got really good size for the position, 6'4", 248. Mykel Williams just feels like a Falcon, though, man. And I know he didn't have the production, but I don't really care. He played hurt all year. He played really on one leg all year, and he was still putting up good numbers. He's just one of those freak athletes that's going to fly up boards. He's only 20 and a half years old. He'll be 20 years old on the night of the draft. He's 265 plus pounds, and he's going to run like 4.4, 4.5 probably. He's going to be a freak. A freak. And I think Raheem Morris is just not going to be able to pass on that. As talented as Mike Green is, and as fun as the clip of him bowling over Josh Connerly is fun to watch, I just can't get over that Mykel Williams is a guy that gets drafted early. He's like Trayvon Walker. He's very similar builds, very similar style of play. And Trayvon Walker went 1 overall. I don't think Mykel Williams goes number 1 overall, but I think that the traits that Trayvon Walker had are similar to the traits that Mykel Williams had, and I think Raheem Morris is going to be like, that's my guy. That's my guy. So I'm going to go Mykel Williams at pick 15 to Atlanta.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before the show about Mykel Williams. I think he is an Atlanta Falcon as well. I just think that's what the Falcons have done for a majority of my lifetime when it comes to drafting an edge. It's the guy that has all the talent, has all the tools, but can he put it all together on the football field? If Mykel Williams does it, he might be the best player in the whole draft. If not, you know what I mean? He's up there with that ability if everything pins out to the best case scenario. So I definitely like the pick. I mean, it's never bad to have guys that go after the quarterback. If you can get an elite edge rusher, you take that opportunity because they're going to help you win football games.
Yep.
Number 16 here, Arizona Cardinals. Offensive line, defensive line are some needs here. This is a tough one because when I did a mock earlier by myself, Mike Green did not make it this far, but since he's here now, I think that's interesting because Gannon, he's there. He's their coach for this upcoming season. And if he's going out with a bang, maybe I try to go get a guy that I believe in, fits my system, can impact the defense, my side of the football. I'm going to go Mike Green here. I was leaning offensive tackle, but I'm going Mike Green, the Marshall edge. I get he played at Marshall, but the numbers are there, the production's there, and obviously the Pro Day clip has gone mega viral with him blowing up an elite tackle prospect. But if he has a great combine, it's just going to continue to skyrocket his stock. So I'm going to take him here at 16. That's definitely higher than he probably ever thought he could get picked. So shout out Mike Green, though, because he's balling, and rightfully so, man. You're going to get yourself a bunch of money for playing well when it matters most. And it helps the Cardinals defense. So,
they did not get any pressure on the quarterback all year, it seemed like. So he's a great pick for them. And Jonathan Gannon's got to be like, I need someone that can get home.
And that's all Gannon did in Philly was create pressure. Well, because they had better players to do his defensive scheme, but you need some of that in Arizona if you're going to try to replicate what you once had.
Yep, totally agree with that. Absolutely. Cincinnati on the clock here. Is Trey Hendrickson going to be back? Is T. Higgins going to be back? I don't know how they keep them all. I will say it's surprising. Franchise tagging T. Higgins is actually way cheaper than paying him the long-term deal, obviously, but like for a year. Normally franchise tagging someone for 1 year is like costly. No, T. Higgins is franchise tag's only $26 million. You're going to probably pay him more than that yearly if you give him a long-term extension. So maybe they go that route. And if they did go that route, I'd be inclined to give them an offensive lineman. There's a couple of really good ones left. And I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go Kelvin Banks Jr. here and go second straight year where they go offensive line. I think Banks Jr. can play another guy. Like all of this offensive line class are players that can play tackle and guard. And a lot of them can even play at the center position too. I mean, played 15 games this year, nearly 1,000 snaps of football this year after 1,000 snaps of football last year. And he gave up 1 sack this year and 1 sack last year. In 2,000 snaps, he gave up a total of 2 sacks. And he's not going up against scrubs. He's going up against guys like I watched his tape against Mykel Williams, against Jalen Walker, who is still on the board. And he held his own every single time. Kelvin Banks is very, very good and can stick at tackle. I think he has the best chance to stick at tackle between some of the top guys. But I've been a big fan of Kelvin Banks. I've had him going way higher than this in the past. I think that we're getting a bit of a steal in Cincinnati. So Kelvin Banks at pick 17.
I love that. I mean, I'm looking at the guys remaining. I'm like, crap, we've let a couple of studs here, but that's somehow that's how the draft goes. You know, there's a reason Cooper DeJean's on the Eagles when we all had him as a first round pick last year. Moving on to 18, the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I mean, these receivers are enticing because
Yeah.
I got to assume DK's leaving eventually, and Tyler Lockett is old, so he's definitely gone. And they have Jackson Smith and Jigba, but if it's just him, I don't know if it's enough. But I don't think they're leaning receiver when they have other needs elsewhere.
Mhm.
Mm. I'm gonna I'm gonna go edge here for the McDonald defense. Get a piece in his second draft as the coach of the Seahawks. I'm gonna go Shamar Stewart from
Yeah.
Texas A&M, passing up on some linemen, or at least Josh Simmons of Ohio State. But I do believe that he'll be able to be a tackle, and that's what he's gonna be. And they really need guard help there. So I'm gonna go Stewart from A&M, big body as well. That's guy 6'5 plus, might even be 6'6. And it's just a piece that McDonald is going to need because, again, it's a similar situation for Gannon. He had this elite defense in Baltimore that they didn't really have the players to replicate in Seattle. Try to get the best defensive line possible, best front seven possible to try to get that defense jumping like it was when he was the DC. So I'm going to go Stewart here from A&M for the Seahawks' edge.
Love that pick. I think Shamar Stewart gives you a Nnamdi Madubuike type of guy on McDonald's defense, and I'm sure he would absolutely love to have that. And it's like you said, the value for the interior offensive lineman in this draft class is anywhere from picks like 25 to 50. That's where you're going to get your best value on interior offensive linemen that could play tackle potentially. You're going to have guys like Wyatt Milam. You're going to have someone like a Gray Zabel potentially available. There's a ton of interior type of guys that'll be available at that run. Not a ton of Shamar Stewart's just sitting out there, man.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that's a great pick for them, and Mike McDonald would be ecstatic about that. Tampa Bay on the clock at pick 19, and there's a ton of receivers available here still, but I think Chris Godwin returns. I think he feels like a buck for life, and him and Mike Evans are going to run it back again this year. So I'm going to stay away from the wide receivers, and I'm going to go with linebacker Jihad Campbell out of Alabama. He's my number one linebacker, off-ball linebacker in the class. Hell, he could rush the passer if you wanted him to. He is
Yeah.
super athletic, very rangy linebacker, good size at 6'3", 240. He's only 21 years old, played a ton of football for Alabama these last 2 years, had 89 tackles, good, actually pretty solid in coverage too. Like he's just a really, really good linebacker. And you need that in Tampa Bay. You've had really good production out of Levante David. His whole career, he's getting up there in age. Devin White. I think you got to address that linebacker core, so I'm going to go with Jihad Campbell.
Love that pick there. And I do agree that I don't know if they're leaning the receiver. You still got Evans. I like McMillan, what he did
Yeah.
this season. I think
Yep.
they improved. And who knows what happens with Godwin, obviously the free agency. But moving on, though, to pick 20, the Denver Broncos, receiver and tight end are their big needs. I think they're going to be leaning receiver because they got Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix. They clearly have a connection, but they need somebody underneath to play that slot every single snap of a football game on offense. I think Luther Burden III is that guy. He had 300 passing snaps last season at Missouri, and 261 of them were from the slot. So the guy is pretty much a slot receiver. I love his speed. His numbers did take a dip this last season, but their quarterback got hurt about 3/4 of the way through the season, and that's pretty much when his numbers started to slump. 2 seasons ago, Burden was absolutely electric, and I think that's what he can be for the Sean Payton offense for a Bo Nix receiver. Everything that the Broncos did with the lack of weapons just makes you excited to think what happens if they get weapons, and I think they get one this draft for Bo Nix because he showed enough to say, hey, I'm here. Let's get me some help, and we can compete. I mean, they made the playoffs. So Luther Burden to a playoff team, I know he's grinning, and I know Bo Nix is grinning as well, getting a stud like that to be his slot receiver.
Yeah, love that pick for him. It's one of those guys where it's like, I hate that he falls to pick 20, but at the same time, there's just not that many teams that are looking wide receiver at this point in the draft that can that doesn't supersede an edge rusher or a left tackle. Like those are two more important positions, but he just happens to fall. And I think that's great for the Broncos. And I think that's great for my next team here in Pittsburgh, who loves and will want to love Emeka Egbuka. I think he's got to be the guy you go with here. You have to go wide receiver. I'm just not as in on Matthew Golden as others are. Not that I think he's going to be bad. He's got solid size. I mean, 6 foot, 195. Emeka is actually bigger than he is. And Pittsburgh just needs weapons, man. They've got George Pickens, and he's their only option. And that's not a good way to run a football team. So I'm gonna roll with Emeka Egbuka here, who's always been a number 2 in his whole career, and he still put up 1,100 yards 2 years ago and over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns this year. So I think he's a stud, man. He's someone that's flying under the radar.
Love that. Yeah, I don't know how he's flying underneath the radar, and I get it's because Ohio State had stacked receivers and they
Yeah.
had the freshmen, whatever.
Mhm.
Egbuka has been the best guy there for a minute, and everyone's been hyping him up for years,
Yep.
and rightfully so. 22 here. I think it's the easy pick to go Colston Loveland, so I'm not going to do it, even though I think that Harbaugh has a raging hard on. If
You know he
Loveland is
does.
there at 22, he can draft his tight end that he recruited. He knows everything about. I'm gonna say screw it. Give me one of the rivals. Give me Jack Sawyer on the edge for the Chargers. I mean, I think they're gonna lose Khalil Mack, and if they bring him back, it's a 1-year deal situation, and I doubt that is the case. I think he's gonna leave to try to go compete. Joey Bosa is getting older. I mean, he played a lot of games this year for the first time in a while, so that's impressive. But still, I want Jack Sawyer on the other side of Bosa on that defensive line. If you're going to lose Mack, I know Harbaugh likes to have a vicious defense, and he played against this guy multiple times. And sure, he beat him every time they played, but he saw the plays he was able to make, and Jack Sawyer has made plays in big time moments. I think he's deserved a first round pick, and I think he's going to go to the Chargers. Let's do it. Take an Ohio State boy for Harbaugh.
Okay, I like that. I love that. I think Jack Sawyer is awesome. I am pretty proud that I had him in the first round a long time ago too. One of those guys that I was like, he's going in the first round. As much as people want to hate it, he is because he has been productive at Ohio State. He's a leader on defense. He has
Mm-hmm.
intangibles that you're like, all right, you can't really coach that, man. You can't teach that. And he just produces, and I'm a big fan of his, and I think Jim Harbaugh will appreciate that on his defense for sure. So great pick there at 22. Green Bay on the board at 23 here, and I've been pretty open about my dislove for Matthew Golden. Not that I think he's bad, I just don't think he should be getting all the love that he's getting. And I'm going to go with his teammate, actually. I'm going to take corner Jahdae Barron out of Texas. He was DB of the year this year. He has been mocked several spots higher than this. He had 5 picks this year and allowed 0 touchdowns. He can play on the boundary. I think he's probably better in the slot because he is 5'11", but he played on the boundary for Texas this year and he did it at an elite level. And we've got guys in this class that are star corners like Will Johnson, like a Benjamin Morrison, like a Trey Amos, Travis Hunter, and Jahdae Barron won the award for best DB in college football. There's something to that. And I think Green Bay is looking down the barrel of Jair Alexander being done in the not too distant future and not having a lot of youth back there. You've got to address the corner, especially when you're playing in the division that the NFC North has become, where it's going to be pass happy. You need corners to cover these receivers, man.
Yeah.
And I think Jahdae Barron gives them one. I'm going with him over Benjamin Morrison just because the injury on Morrison just scares me just a touch to pull back and say, you know what, give me the productive kid out of Texas. So I'll go Jahdae Barron, pick 23.
Yeah, I love Barron as a slot, and he did play boundary, like you said, Nate. He only played like 150 slot snaps this
Yeah.
past season, but he's been elite at that position. And ask the Washington Commanders how important Mike Sanistrell, their slot corner, has been this past season. He made big time plays against the Lions. A slot corner helps your defense immensely because if you can run that nickel as your base or as often as you need to, that's a gigantic help to have those DBs on the field. So I love that pick there. Number 24, Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to go. It is their 4th need according to PFF, running back, guard, interior D line, then corner. But I'm going to go corner here because I think we talked about a little bit before the show. He is a Flores guy through and through. He's a man shutdown corner. And if he runs at the combine, because he was hurt this past season a little bit, his stock's going to fly up even more. And maybe he's not even here for the Vikings. But in this scenario, he is. I'm going to take Siobhan Ravel from Eastern Carolina.
Boy.
Guy's an absolute stud. He's 6'3". Like I said, shut down man corner. He's exactly what Flores wants. Let everybody else blitz, and you're going to shut down this guy one-on-one. And guess what? He's going to step up to the task. And if he gets picked by the Vikings here, I'm going to be sad because he will be an impact player for them for multiple years to come. So I'm going to go Siobhan Ravel for the Vikings at 24. I think he could be even higher than that. That's a combine. If he runs and performs at the combine, I don't know what's going on with the injury exactly. That's a guy that could completely fly up draft boards.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think I think it's even a higher need than we would think. And I think PFF does it like offense and then defense, and they
Okay,
just
okay.
move like forward and then they move back. So they go like D line, edge,
Yeah.
linebacker, DB. So I think that's probably why. Because I think corner might be their number one need.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think defensive back overall might be their number one need, truthfully. So if they really think it's their fourth highest need, I'm going to have to disagree. But I love the Siobhan Ravel pick there. I think he's going to be so good. And people are going to wonder why the hell he went at 24 and not top
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
Houston on the clock here, and I'm going to go with a guy that I think I've been mocking to them for a long time now, and that's a guy that PFF is a little down on for some reason. He's in the 60s, man. Tyler Booker's way better than that. He is a monster offensive lineman. He is so good. No sacks allowed this year. He is a road paver on that offensive line. He's young. He's big, 6'5", 325. They need to address the interior of their offensive line so bad. I think Tyler Booker is the best pure guard in this class. Now, there are tackles that will move to guard. Wyatt Milam. If Wyatt Milam was just a guard and he played guard his whole career, I could say, okay, I've seen you do it. Tyler Booker, I've seen do it at a high level at Alabama, and I'm going to go with him for Houston and pair him up to go up against Will Anderson Jr. People love Tyler Booker, man. I hear so many good things about him.
Yeah, I mean, they need help on the offensive line. Got to keep Stroud up because that's why he regressed at all. If you think that this past season, his offensive line fell apart all around him.
Yep.
This is a tough one for me. I don't, I just do not grasp how the league looks at corners apparently, because I just, with the way that it went with Christian Gonzalez getting picked where he did, I just don't know. Benjamin Morrison here from Notre Dame is interesting for the Rams, but so is Josh Simmons, and that's where I'm going to lean the tackle from Ohio State. Matt Stafford coming back another season. You want to keep him up as much as he can, and even when he's gone, Simmons can be an impact tackle. That is where I think he will play in the NFL, and that can be a position of need that you keep for a while. That you can get here now, help immediately this upcoming season where you're going to compete if you have Stafford, and then he can be here after if you go through a rebuild. He can become a leader through that for the future. So I'm going to go Simmons from Ohio State to the Los Angeles Rams at 26. That's a steal, according to PFF.
Yeah.
So
I think it is a steal. I don't think Josh Simmons is top 10, but I do think he is so good. I think he's a top 15 type of player, especially if he was healthy all year. Missing a good chunk of the season, about 9 games worth of the season, really hurts his stock. And how good is he going to be at the combine? Is he going to be ready to go? Is he going to be ready to go for his pro day? Or are we basing all of our evaluation on him off of 6 games from one year and then previous seasons? Players go up and down all the time. Like we had a guy last year from Penn State, Kalen King, who going into the season was considered a top 10 pick, and he went in the 7th round of the draft because he was no good that year. And I don't think he did a whole lot for Green Bay this year, honestly. It's like, it just depends on how these guys play. What have you done for me recently? Josh Simmons has been hurt, so I need him to get healthy. I love me some Josh Simmons. The tape I've seen on him is excellent, but I need him to get right so that way he can show off at the combine a little bit. So love that pick for the Rams. They've got to be thrilled with that. And really bummed out are the Baltimore Ravens, who are on the clock at pick 27 because it would have been a sprint to the podium to turn in the Josh Simmons card. Ronnie Stanley's getting up there in age, and Roger Rosengarten was solid at right tackle. He may not be the long-term answer. They need offensive linemen, and I think they're bummed that a lot of them are gone here. But Benjamin Morrison's not a bad consolation prize. Only 6 games this year because he got hurt, but passer rating when targeted the last 3 years, 29.2, 60, and then 58.4. So he has been locked down on the boundary. You can play him and Nate Wiggins opposite of each other and put Marlon Humphrey in the slot. And then you've got Kyle Hamilton over the top still. You've got an awesome secondary going forward. And in the AFC where it's just quarterback heavy, you've got to have those corners, man. I think corner is so undervalued right now for some reason. I don't understand it. But if I'm the Ravens and I see Benjamin Morrison still on the board here, I am turning that card in very fast. Benjamin Morrison at 27.
Yeah, if he's there at 27, that's an immediate. And I'm sure some Notre Dame fans will be chirping us in the comments saying, how did he fall this far? And again, I don't know, but how did Emmanuel Forbes go as high as he did? And who knows? And whoever says that he was the best corner in that draft is a moron. It wasn't me. Anyway, Lions here. I think they're going to be going edge just based on what's left around, who's available pretty much at this point. And it's Nick Scorton from Texas A&M. Just a scenario where The defense was riddled with injuries last year, and this guy is also a promising player. I love Nick Scorton on tape. I mean, he's a run-stopping defensive end. He reminds me of Montez Sweat a little bit. It's
Yep.
just, will the sack numbers constantly be there? I don't know if they'll be as high as you'd like, but if he can impact every single play and not just be a pass rusher, that's obviously a good thing. I think Montez Sweat is a really good player, so that's a good comparison, at least coming from
Yeah.
me. So
Agreed.
I think that the Lions will definitely be interested in him, interested in an edge as well. Just with all the injuries, Hutch is going to be great coming back from it, but still, you can't have too many of a good thing. And the edge is a premier position, and Nick Scorton is potentially a premier player that you can get at 28. So the Lions will be taking Nick Scorton, and that's one that they're running to the podium a little bit.
Yeah, that's a player I could see going at 12 to Dallas and say that's a solid pick. It's a solid pick. Washington on the clock here. They've got some needs. There's a player that PFF doesn't like, and he's way down the board, but it's a guy that's going first round. I would almost bet it. And he's another guy that's like, are you an edge rusher or are you an off-ball linebacker? And that's Jalen Walker out of Georgia. I think that if he's available at this pick, 6'2", 245, great sideline to sideline speed as a middle linebacker. He's fallen down the board just a little bit because he's a bit of a tweener. Is he going to rush the passer? He could if you want him to. But I think that Washington needs just best player they can get on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's Jalen Walker, since he's still available here. And it stinks because the strength of this class is defensive tackle, and that's the strength of their defense. Everywhere else has serious concerns and serious issues. And I consider maybe a Trey Amos in this spot, but at the end of the day, man, Jalen Walker still being available for Washington, I absolutely love. And so I'm going to send that pick in.
Love that. I mean, this one's a tough one. This next one for me, the Bills, because obviously you could say, hey, they need receiver help. They need another weapon for Josh Allen. Amari Cooper really wasn't what he once was when they brought him in, and he pretty much carried that offense by himself. But then it's like the defense on the other side, people were ripping on it, rightfully so. Sure, they played well throughout the season. The talent on the roster, looking at it, wasn't the best, and you always want to be improving. I don't want to say because Josh Allen carried such a gigantic load on the offensive side of the ball this past season that do it again, but you're almost to that point when you're getting all this money. Hey, do that again, Mr. Superstar, that we paid all this money. You elevate everybody else around you. So I am going to pass on Matthew Golden, and I'm sure Bills fans are saying you're an idiot, but hopefully this guy comes in and changes your mind. I'm going to go Walter Nolan, the defensive interior player from Mississippi. This guy's absolutely balling right now, and he will continue to fly up draft boards. But I think this is a great piece that you need a defensive line that is stout. And clearly that Kansas City game showed it in the postseason. The Kansas City Chiefs were able to move the ball on the ground with confusion, sure, but they still impacted. I mean, they had 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 from Mahomes, 1 from Kareem Hunt. You definitely don't love to see that if you're a Bills fan. So I think Nolan can come in, shore up that defensive line a little bit. I think that's a guy that could be a stud when people look back and go, damn, what a steal. I like how he's played at the Senior Bowl. So give me Nolan to the Buffalo Bills at 30.
Yeah, that's an awesome pick. One of my favorite players so far from the entire draft process is the North Carolina offensive lineman, Willie, I'm trying to think of his last name. Willie Lampkin. And he's been awesome. He's only, the issue with him is he's only 5'11", 270 pounds. So he's small for an offensive lineman, but he is so damn strong. And he's been awesome. He stood up Deon Walker, who's got him by 50 pounds and damn near a foot taller than him. He stood him up in one-on-one. Super impressive. And then you watch the rep against Walter Nolan, and Walter Nolan just runs by him like Lampkin's not even trying. And I was like, when I first saw that rep, I'm like, who did he just go up against? And then I realized it was Walter Nolan, and I was blown away by his first step quickness. And Walter Nolan next to Ed Oliver is like the most menacing sounding defensive tackle pairing in the entire NFL. Those are just 2 guys that we should be filming them in black and white because those are such old fashioned names. And they're just going to beat my ass every Sunday. I just know it.
Walter Nolan. I love it.
I mean, that is a guy, he's wearing a suit and a top hat because he's from the 1930s. And no, he's just playing dominant football. He's like Ed Oliver. I love that comparison. He's maybe a little undersized for defensive tackle, but he's so quick. His first step is so quick, and he's so strong that it's just a guy that's should not be available at pick 30. And if Buffalo is able to bring in Walter Nolan, I mean, there's just no point in playing the games until they play the Chiefs and lose to them in the playoffs. It's just a guarantee. Just move along. Great pick for them, man. I hate it, but it's such a good pick. Philadelphia on the clock here, and this one is really tough for me because Josh Connerly's there, and I think he's really good. Colston Loveland is still here, and I think he's really good, but he doesn't block well. He's not known for his blocking, and Philadelphia wants you to block. No matter what, you have to block.
Yeah.
So I'm looking offensive line. They have guard listed as a need. And it's true because Mekhi Becton played right guard for them all year. He's a free agent. He's probably going to get decent money, and they're not going to pay him. You've got Landon Dickerson, you've got Cam Jurgens, but you still need that right guard spot to be filled. Alexander Steen was okay to spell one of those guys, but either way, this is how they draft. They draft defensive linemen and they draft offensive linemen in the first round, and they figure everything else out. So I'm going to go with an offensive lineman who's been having an awesome Senior Bowl, Gray Zabel. He has taken snaps at all 5 offensive line positions, and he's done so really well. And he's someone that I am not sold on maybe as a prospect, but I'm getting there. I still have to get through all of his games and all of his tape. I haven't even had an opportunity yet because this is a really deep offensive line class. But he hasn't missed a game in the last 3 seasons, played a ton of snaps, 1 sack allowed all year, good size, 6'6", 305 pounds. I think he needs to put on a little bit of weight to play interior offensive line for them. I think you need to put on just maybe 10, 15 more pounds of muscle once you get to the NFL. And I think he could be really good. And I'm certain that the Eagles will value his positional flexibility. So we'll go Gray Zabel at pick 31.
Love that. Love that. Now, I'm taking this pick just because I like the larger tackle, the 6'6" guy. I know Josh Connerly is probably a first-round pick, but I'm just spicing it up a little bit. Kansas City Chiefs here at 32 after winning the Super Bowl. Big shock. I'm going to go Wyatt Milam from West Virginia. The guy played over 2,200 snaps, 0. Let me repeat that again. 0 sacks. The man allowed 0 sacks and 2,200 snaps at West Virginia. I get maybe not the best competition, but it's still D1. Damn good school at that. So I think that the Chiefs don't want Thuney out at left tackle. They want to get that over with, get that experiment done with. They can replace this guy. Get he's a young tackle, but hey, the success is there, and I just like the big body, long arms, size, and I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be looking tackle pretty much guaranteed here. So I'm going to go Wyatt Milam from West Virginia to end our first round.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite players in the entire draft process. He was my first draft crush of this entire ordeal when I started really looking at the class back in November. And another guy that was really being undervalued early in the process and is still, I think, being undervalued. Him being available at 32 is gross. Probably should have taken him over Gray Zabel, but I felt like I needed to get Gray in the first round because I haven't yet, and I think he's earned that. But Wyatt Milam can play 4 of the 5 offensive line positions and play it at a high level. You said 0 sacks. He played against Abdul Carter. Let's all remember that. He went against the guy that, according to our draft, is going number 1 overall, is the best edge rusher in the class. Wyatt Milam said, not today, buddy, and shut him down. Shut him down. Abdul Carter won some of those reps, but if you win the rep and you don't get the sack, did you really win the rep, honestly? Wyatt Milam got in the way long enough to where you could not get to his quarterback, and he did it at a high level all season. And pass blocking is not even the best part of his game. He is a monster in the run game. When he gets his hands on you, the rep is over. You have lost. If you as a defensive lineman do not get his hands away from you immediately, you've lost the rep. Once he has leverage, once he has that initial grip, it's over. And I saw it time and time again when I was evaluating him. He's a mid-first round talent guy. I think he's one of the 3 or 4 best overall offensive linemen in the entire class. But because of that uncertainty of what position he'll play at, I think he falls down the board just a little bit. And he didn't go against the best competition, like you said, too. So I'm looking for Wyatt Milam to fly up the boards as the season gets closer, similar to how Troy Fatanu did last year, tested out of his skull, and then just was dominant everywhere he went. So I love that pick for Kansas City. That is a home run for them, and they just get better because, of course, they do. So love it. Love the mock draft we've got here. I think that it's not going to all be chalk. I know everyone's going to be like, oh, my God, you had this guy going above this guy. It's like, people evaluate players differently. NFL front offices look at one guy and think, oh, this guy's a B and this guy's an A. And then another front office may have him flipped. It just depends on what you see and how these teams fit your versatility versus going best player available. I don't think that the Jets need a defensive tackle, but if Mason Graham is there, how do you not pull the trigger? You have to pull the trigger. So I think we've got a good mix of best player available and need kind of meeting here with a lot of our first round picks. I think that this draft, initially, I was down on it. I'm like, there's not a ton here. But man, once you get to like picks 15 to 60, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
here's the draft. This is the
Yeah.
draft. And there's so much talent. It's like, how do you not have this guy in the first round? How do you not have this guy in the first round? There's only 32 picks. We can only put so many people in the first.
Yeah, for real.
So I love it. Well done. I can tell you've been doing your homework. You're ready to roll for the draft.
Yeah, I can't wait. I cannot wait. I'm excited. We're gonna be there. I know we talk about it all the time, but the fact that we go to this draft and have been these past couple of years, it just makes it a different experience. Well, we didn't go last year. We saw the show for the draft, but still, it's a different experience being much more involved in the draft setting. I love it, and I just can't wait to get more into it.
Yep, absolutely. So that's what we've got for you guys for this week's mock draft. You guys already know we'll be back next week with another mock draft for you. And if you haven't already, make sure you guys go check out our free agent videos that are available to you on the channel, where we talk about some of the best free agents in the upcoming offseason, what kind of deals we think they're going to get, and where we think they're going to go. And then if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit that red subscribe button for this offseason content that's coming your guys' way. We're going to have individual player breakdown videos coming out on the channel really soon. So stay tuned to that, and we will see you guys in the next one.
Peace.